hope for 40,000 home buyers stuck in project delays as the government body, National Buildings Construction Corporation or the NBCC, has been asked to undertake the projects of errant realtor Amrapali Group. The real estate company had failed to deliver flats to home buyers for over 7 years.
The Supreme Court has gone ahead and cracked the whip on the Amrapali Group, and how after yesterday's dramatic orders, today it was the turn of the Apex Court to ask the NBCC to come on board and assume a greater responsibility towards the completion of these unfinished projects. The top court wants to hear from the NBCC in a month's time about a detailed plan or proposal about these unfinished projects.
Though this is not the first time that the top court has taken up the case of home buyers. In another case involving Unitech, home buyers dragged the builders to the top court after they failed to deliver homes for nearly 9 years. The Supreme Court recently directed an auction of over 600 acres of unencumbered land properties of the firm located in Agra, Varanasi, Bengaluru and Chennai. The Supreme Court directed that money from the auction be refunded to home buyers. Decisions like these have kindled hope in home buyers across India who have been fighting for possession of their homes. Now, as home buyers stuck in project delays look for solutions, Mirror now asks, is this the solution to project delays and duped home buyers? Will the government have to step in and complete pending projects?
So this is a problem that people are facing across the country. We've been tracking it for a couple of years on this channel, the fact that home buyers have paid for their homes, but the building is not complete. Years go by, some have been waiting for decades. Developers who've collected crores of rupees and then diverted that money elsewhere never finished the home that they'd started. But today the Supreme Court asked NBCC to complete all of the homes started by Amrapali. The question that I'm asking today is this a viable solution for all home buyers who are trapped across the country, who've parted with their money and have no home right now? Could this be the solution, that the government take over and finish the property? Joining me on the show, Pinky Anand, Additional Solicitor General. We're so glad to have her on the show. Dr. Aman Pawar is the spokesperson for the Congress. Kapil Sankal is a lawyer with the Delhi High Court. Sriram Khanna is a consumer expert. Anila Singh with the BJP. Sham Chitari is a home buyer with Whispering Towers in HDIL, and they've been waiting a very long time. He represents other home buyers. Lati Tekchandani is a real estate expert, and we'll also have Niranjan Hirandani join us through the course of the conversation. I'm going to start with Pinky Anand. Ms. Anand, many thanks for joining us on the show here at Mirror Now. For all of the viewers who are watching at this point, who are facing similar problems across the country, could this be the possible solution? Do you think this is a solution the courts would apply to other cases as well?
See, one can never say what kind of solutions courts would apply, particularly in these kind of peculiar circumstances, which is normal in its nature and arises from the difficulties of people. But what one is finding today is that in all such cases where home buyers are being stranded, projects are not being completed, monies are being diverted, the courts are trying to find the solutions outright so that the home buyers are not prejudiced. Please understand, home buyers otherwise come in a very diverse category and do not have any cohesive kind of force to fight for their cause or to get the end result. So the only way that this process possibly can be done is if somebody takes hold of the entire litigation, so to say, in hand and ensures that the interest of the home buyers is not sacrificed. And I think towards that end, the particular proposal that the Supreme Court has put up to say NBCC should complete the project within a time-bound plan and also hold up the Amrapali builders, I think is a big development and very favorable for the home buyers. And definitely under the scrutiny of Supreme Court, you would find this happening. But I cannot say what would happen in every given case. Every given case does have its own facts. But the sympathy and the approach for the home buyers is evident from the side of the Apex Court.
Well, Mr. Niranjan Hirandani is with us right now. Mr. Hirandani, good evening. We do know that there are a lot of projects that are very expensive. Even Amrapali sold projects to the tune of crores of rupees. Would NBCC or any other type of government organization be able to complete, or would they have the know-how to complete a project of this kind?
You'll be surprised at the Faye that we had in fact suggested to the government that NBCC should be brought into force for the purposes of taking over some of these projects. We didn't name Amrapali specifically, but this was a discussion just held about 10 to 15 days back with the Honorable Minister for Housing, where we suggested that in order to complete the projects, we need to bring in two organizations. One was an organization like NBCC, and we named it specifically, and also to bring the RERA authorities into the picture. So we suggested that if a combination of the RERA authority could be brought into the picture to look after the interest of the consumer, and there is a specific provision in the RERA law which in fact provides for the purposes of taking such an action to do so under the Real Estate Regulation Act. So I think bringing it under Real Estate Regulation Act, we can even preempt it, and you don't have to go to the Supreme Court for every such case. We could obviously approach RERA authorities in order to take over such projects and give it to NBCC or any other equivalent authority in different states. But the case of Noida is very special, in the sense that the numbers which are there in Noida are so very large that probably the intervention of the Supreme Court was needed in view of the controversy of NCLT orders and other orders coming in contravention to that. But in those cases where NCLT has not come into the picture, I would suggest that RERA authorities could come into the picture along with NBCC or any other equivalent body to complete the project, because completion of the project is the first necessity of all this what is happening.
Well, you know, I want to speak to the consumers who are with me. Shyam is with me in the studio right now talking about HDIL. Shyam, what is the problem with the HDIL case? How much money have you paid and what have you received so far?
Well, I bought this property in 2011 and the property was marketed at about 2010 or so. There have been constantly changing facts from the developer that is coming every single year. This project has been started and stopped for about, I think, almost 4 times in 5 years or so.
Right.
And every time there's a new alibi that the developer would come up and give, you know. And what he does is he starts the project, then he takes some money, then he stops the project again. And this has been happening constantly. I mean, there are so many flaws, that so many of these defaults that he's committed. I mean, if I have to lay it down, it's going to be a big fat file actually. To start with, nobody was informed that it was an SRA project in the beginning. We came to know of it only sometime around 2012. And then subsequently he changed the fungible FSI of the property also, which led to an increase in the area which he didn't inform us. He took a decision unilaterally, changed the floor plate, changed the area, asked us for a market price, and completely unfair. We were not shown the agreement that we are going to sign. We were simply taken to the registrar's office. We signed the documents there, and we thought, okay, now the project is on its way. But every time, every year, he would stop the project.
More of a delay. So would you prefer right now that the court find a way to give your money back? Because one of the things the courts have done is attached personal assets of a lot of developers, auctioned them and found a way to pay people back. Or would you prefer instead that a government organization take over the project and complete it?
Personally, I beg to differ with both these cases. Primarily, if you're talking about the money that I put in 2011 and somebody put in 2010, there is a value for that money at that point of time. Everybody had a home to buy. Everybody has a lot of dreams attached to it. And whatever that these developers do is completely unfair, and it's happening openly, brazenly, under this very nose of these government authorities. And nobody dares to do anything because the builder lobby is supposedly very big and you can't mess around with them for whatever reasons and all that. So if I am buying a home in 2011, I believe my friend bought a same property about a kilometer away.
So why don't you want the government to complete the apartment for you?
Well, in the first place, it's the government's job to ensure that these people follow the line. Follow the rules and regulations that has been laid down. You know, it's like talking about a cure when you could have done it while you could have prevented it in the first place. And it's all because of the government lack of attitude in getting these things done by the developer.
Well, I don't know if that's entirely fair. The government has come up right now with the RERA laws which were meant to battle this in this particular situation. I'm just going to take this back to Pinky Anand. Pinky Anand, you've heard what the consumer has to say, and you're right. Every consumer comes with a specific case where the violations are specific to that building, which makes the whole thing so much more complicated. But it's perhaps not the government's fault at this time, but Do you believe there's a solution for a case like this other than to simply go to court?
Well, I'm afraid one has to really work a little more in this direction for sure, because what is happening across board is that the developers who are taking in monies from various people all across the country or in specific projects, monies do get diverted off. Whatever the slumps is, that is to be borne by individual people who are, small people. They are not huge people, they are not big people, they are not rich people, and homes are what they're looking for. So I do think some more intervention, some more requirements, some more regulations are required to be put into order, into perspective, as the homeowner rightly said. I mean, why can't we have a little more before the thing goes to court? You see, every matter cannot go to court. Every time the court cannot intervene on a level which is above and above all the concerned laws, for example. This is on a humane solution, so fair enough, it should be done as much as possible, but at the same time we must ensure that it doesn't come to the last stage. So some more work could be done at that end.
Dr. Aman Pawar of the Congress, please go ahead.
I think firstly we need to identify what is the root of this problem. The root of this problem is that the buyers take money the builders take money from the buyers for a particular project and then divert that money to some other project. For example, they will take money from the buyers to build, say, Bharti Towers in Sector 47 of the Noida, but invest that money into a new pool of land that they have to buy. Now this particular problem was proposed to be resolved by the 2013 draft of the RERA. The RERA 2013 draft said that there will be an escrow account that the builder will have to open, and the entire amount that the builder will collect for a particular project will have to be deposited in that escrow
present
account,
so
that he is
RERA
not
now.
able to divert that money for any other project. And the home buyers who have given certain hefty amounts from their pocket for a particular project, that is actually invested in that particular project and is not diverted to another project. Now that very important clause in the RERA Act was diluted by the BJP government, and now that escrow account condition nowhere remains in the present law. Therefore, the builders are at large, they are free to divert that amount they collect from the buyers, and they divert it to for any new project they want to invest in, and the helpless buyer is left behind fighting cases in the court. And we have to understand the kind of double whammy the buyers actually go under. But
one second, Dr. Pawar, Aman Pawar, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to say that the clause has been diluted by the BJP, because let me set this straight for our audience. RERA is specific to states, which means every state government has written their own version of RERA, and there are different parties in every state.
I'm sorry, no.
So, and these state governments have been given the option to change things.
Because there is an act of the parliament, which is the Parent Act, and the state bodies can only frame their regulations around the Parent Act. Now the Parent Act provides
so do you know what is in the act in Karnataka vis-a-vis what is in the act in Gujarat?
When the Parent Act does not provide for it, the state bodies cannot provide for something which is contrary to the Parent Act.
Let me ask Kapil, Sankla, do you agree that, and I just want to point out, because when RERA was coming out, we compared Gujarat with Maharashtra, with Karnataka, with Delhi, with UP, with Haryana, because these are the states in which there are problems, and they were all different. They all diluted to different degrees.
You see, it's not just about diluting. They changed the rules to frame, and they frame the rules which are state specific. So it would be incorrect to say that the Parent Act has been diluted. I think that would be an incorrect statement. But coming back to certain very pertinent questions you raised, and very rightly so. You see, in this case, the Amrapali case, there was an admission of diversion of funds. And this was an admitted statement, I think, yesterday or day before yesterday. And after that, 41 companies' bank accounts were seized, personal accounts were seized, etc. But the idea that was put forth by the Honorable Supreme Court, and rightly so, was a solution-provided approach and not a problematic approach. What the Honorable Supreme Court did was that it actually took the home buyers first. It decided that there are home buyers who need houses, and instead of now going on a long-drawn litigation and issues which may digress, it from the main point, which is let us give homes to the home buyers. Now, there was a gentleman with, you asked a very pertinent question that would you be fine with the fact that the Honorable Supreme Court has directed that you build homes, or would you want your money back? And there was no straight answer to that. And this is something that we see in courts every day. You see, there's a division in the ranks. There are a number of people who want homes, and there are a number of other people who are basically investors who are riding the wave. Now, what the Honorable Supreme Court has done is that the Honorable Supreme Court has brought home buyers first. It has decided that NBCC would make the homes and give it to the home buyers. It is, of course, going to agitate a number of investors, people who really don't need homes, people who basically invested when the property was going up.
Yes.
Now, this is a very, very important difference, and this is a very, very important fact that has to be seen. Let me just tell you that the number of litigation that is going on, people who are basically filing criminal cases, etc., would majorly be those people who have invested their money and they want their money back. Now, this would be at the cost and consequences of the genuine home buyers.
Yes.
Therefore, kudos to the Honorable Supreme Court for coming up with this solution. And I think this solution would have far-reaching ramifications. We can actually bring on, solutions like these for other genuine home buyers, rather than people who've just invested their money and for the desperation of getting their money are probably creating roadblocks for the development of the projects that are now on hold because of the number of litigations. It is much better that we bring the home buyers first, we bring solutions, because after all, these are the builders of the nation, the houses are required.
Right. Pinky Anand and Niranjan Hirandani. Pinky Anand first. The Supreme Court has also decided to attach all accounts and some personal assets of developers, specifically in the Amrapali case. Do you think, again, this is something that other courts, because there are cases of this kind in almost every court in the country right now, do you think perhaps this is something other courts will also start to consider?
It is something which needs to be considered, because the only way to secure the repayment or the building of the project is to ensure that the funds don't get further diverted, and the only way that you can ensure that is by means of such attachments and ensuring that the properties of the groups concerned who are developing and basically there is fraud being committed on the home buyers. How to secure their interest, this is possibly one of the only
for the
ways.
builders to open an escrow account.
No, hang on. Aman Pawar, please allow Pinky Anand to finish making her statement.
In any case, Faye, the point is, as I said, this is one of the very, very efficient ways, and this is basically contemplated by law to ensure that the funds which are of the individual funds of the developers or the companies are kept attached in order to ensure repayment, if any, or for the project itself, for the building of the project. That is one of the sure ways, and it's something which needs to be looked at by each of the courts for sure. But in addition, when we were talking about RERA, by the way, RERA does contemplate the situations. We have an understanding here which is being wrongly conveyed, that it has been diluted. The question is that it is the state laws. The state laws have to ensure that these escrow accounts, etc., are set up. So nobody can say that it is contrary, or if it is not there in the parent act, therefore it cannot be done. I think it's taking the argument totally the wrong way. The state regulations can provide for it, and this also would be one of the solutions which should take into the interest of the homeowners.
In fact, I just want to, and I know a lot of people watching at home are going to be nodding furiously. Mr. Hirandani, this question is to you. Accusations against or observations against Amrapali made by the Supreme Court of the country. You are playing dirty games with the judiciary. You have tried to fool the entire system. You filed false affidavits to mislead the court. You have failed to comply with orders of furnishing details of assets on time. You are misusing our lenient approach. Now, this is complaints. These are complaints that most buyers will agree with. And one of the buyers in the studio told us that the builders are being brazen in their approach, and it seems like they're being brazen in their approach with the Supreme Court as well, Mr. Hirandani. So, in spite of the fact that the market has turned, that we now have a regulator, brazen developers continue to treat everybody like they're above the law, including the courts. Why is that?
I think, Faye, the problem is slightly different in different cases. In the case of Amrapali, I think the diversion of funds was absolutely clear and was self-defeating to the developer. I think the developer really diverted the funds to an extent to which the Supreme Court found it really bad, and I don't think that type of case would fit all the cases that we are talking about today, which are running into difficulties. But I guess the precedent is very, very clear that in those type of cases where similar fraud is committed by the developer in terms of diverting the money and then stopping the projects, and the projects getting delayed or not getting continued or completed because of such diversion of funds, I think definitely the rest of the country judiciary will have to follow the course. But as I said before, I think it's not possible for the Supreme Court to take all the cases of the entire country, as Mrs. Anand has just now mentioned. And I think it would be important if the RERA authorities of each of the states could take this type of thing into their hands, use other agencies to take up projects which are actually stuck and incomplete, and really take it over on similar basis. Such provisions exist in the RERA law. So while one case, which is an extreme example where large number of people are really affected in the Noida region, and there may be several cases like that, could approach the Supreme Court directly. But I don't think this is a kind of precedent where we need to have
okay, so here's the question then that I'm going to ask the panel again. We expected, Mr. Hirandani, that when RERA came in, a lot of these problems would be sorted out. Is RERA a toothless tiger? One of our audience members have asked us that on Involve. Is RERA unable to do its job because it has been watered down, Mr. Hirandani?
I think it is owed a responsibility to the people of this country and the consumers to take a proactive stand. It just can't dole out punishments and things like that. RERA authorities have to become proactive in terms of projects which are stuck, and I think whether they take action against the builders or not is a separate issue. But I think the first mandate is to see that the projects are completed. So irrespective of what else, incidentally, I must share with you that we had in the last meeting the State Bank of India, HDFC and other authorities which were willing to finance such stuck scheme, provided the viability of the scheme was there. And hence it is possible that many of the things where RERA authorities will intervene, and if there is a balance residuary land or other things which are available in many of the projects, they could take over those pieces of pockets of land and make the projects which are apparently not working because of the fraud done by the builders could be taken up by the RERA authorities to get it completed. I don't see that every case can go to the Supreme Courts. It's not possible.
But, you know, this is what we had expected would stop after RERA came in, but every cases are still going to Consumer Court, to the National, Consumer Court in Delhi as well, and in every High Court and the Supreme Court. Mr. Tekchandani, is RERA, toothless tigers, unable to stop or tame the developers?
See, it's actually too early for RERA to,
Yes,
come
the
up.
RERA authority
Actual
in
colors of
Maharashtra is
RERA and,
extremely
the working of RERA, you will realize 1 year down the line. Today, RERA is, a very new body which has been formed, and, it was formed state-wise, and there are different parameters, different conditions, different scenarios in different states. So it's all getting into action, but real action from RERA would be, I would say, in 1 year's time from now. People who are the buyers have started approaching RERA. They have not left any of the courts, the judiciary, the RERA, or any of the body, to approach. They are, because it's the hard-earned money. They're going at every step.
But maybe 2-3 minutes. Just tell them.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem that RERA tends to regulate new projects, and they are able to. The escrow account, Ms. Pinky Anand, is actually only useful if we are talking about a new project ground up. But the problem right now with RERA, or the problem right now with existing projects like the ones we're looking at, that we're talking about, is that you can't bring in an escrow account if the money is not there, if the money has already been diverted, if the money has already been moved out. And that is where we need a solution. That is where we need a solution, and that is where RERA cannot help us. So I'm going to go back right now. If we do have Pinky Anand, do we? Okay, we don't have Pinky Anand anymore. To Aman Pawar
RERA has provision.
Could I just?
I'm saying RERA has a provision
I
where
think there is another solution.
Okay, go ahead, Aman Pawar. What is the solution?
There is a provision in the
solution
RERA
is
Act. There is a provision in the RERA Act.
overtly
that any new
active
sale-
agencies.
No, one at a time, please. I can't understand both of you. Aman Pawar first.
overtly-
Aman Pawar first.
Yes, so Faye, I wanted to make a point that the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI, which are overtly active when it comes to targeting the politically adversaries of the BJP, are virtually sleeping when it comes to people-centric issues. Why are they not catching hold of these builders? Why do we see every day a new case of Unitech, of Amrapali, of Supertech? And why does the Supreme Court has to intervene? Why don't
sorry,
these
I think this
agencies come
gentleman
into
doesn't
play
want home buyers
and they
for
attach
home
the
buyers.
assets of these builders?
Yes.
See, Faye, fundamentally, RERA is
The whole
new
idea
to
is
this whole
either
thing,
you
actually.
develop
Number
the
one.
property.
Okay, see, one second. All right, wait for me to come to you and then
Wait.
start answering. All right, Kapilji, go ahead. The problem is the properties that already exist and are under
Yes, thank you.
construction, the money is already gone. What will RERA do now?
Exactly.
Yes, so out of experience, what I've seen in the High Court in a number of winding up petitions, etc., is that where there are genuine home buyers, they usually form an association or an RWA. And the association and the RWA come up with some solution, which usually is this, that either make an escrow account, bring in another builder, or direct the builder to make a statement in the court to hand over the possession, build the property and hand over the possession. In such cases, we have noticed that the builders also agree to these demands and the escrow accounts are created. Now, as I was saying is that there is a very important difference between a genuine home buyer who wants the property to be constructed, the project to be built and the houses to be delivered. And there are other people who are basically investors. So an investor would usually be talking about a CBI and a criminal case, etc., so that the project does not get completed. The idea here is to complete the project and hand over the project. It could be under the aegis of the Honorable Supreme Court, and as per the order that it has passed, that you actually come up with a solution where another party, a third party, a government body or somebody else builds the project. Or you could have an understanding between genuine home buyers and the builder itself. So you cannot actually just fragmentize the law as it is. You have to understand the entire aspects of the law, and you have to also understand the fact that if you just talk about filing criminal cases, CBI inquiries, political ramifications, you're not really helping the genuine home buyers. And that's a very important thing, and that's exactly what I think the Honorable Supreme Court has also considered in the order that it has passed.
No, personally,
Yes,
I don't know.
Shyam.
My lawyer friend actually is differentiating between an investor and a buyer, a genuine home buyer. Both are the same, actually, as far as I'm concerned. Why should the court differentiate between an investor and a buyer?
Not at all, sorry.
Number one. Number two, I would just like to point out this everybody's attention to this auction notice that I have for HDIL that has come off notice only last week, and there's going to be an auction of this entire development the entire plot is going to be auctioned off, and I'm really finding it hard to speak, because how can such a crazy thing happen in this age, in this era, in this time, wherein a registered property which has been financed by Allahabad Bank and a multitude of other banks is being put under sale, when I have a registered home in the same premises.
So the
clause
land
number
on
20
which
here,
the home was going to be built is being auctioned.
no, including the building that is there, halfway the building is also there. The clause number 20 here says that there are no encumbrances on this property. How can Allahabad Bank refuse to acknowledge 150 home buyers who have taken mortgage through them? So fundamentally, things are wrong here. We can't go to RERA for this.
Well, and I'm going to bring in Anila Singh, who's been listening very patiently of the BJP. Anila Singh, obviously the real estate regulator was meant to have been brought in to solve these problems, but a lot of the problems have not been solved, and the Supreme Court is dealing with them day on day. Builders are becoming more and more brazen, and we had the representative of the Congress say that this is because the current government has diluted the act.
Number one, like he was talking about escrow account. Instead of escrow account, now separate account facility is being given to the promoter. Escrow and the separate account, they are one and the same thing. Not much of the difference is there. So purposely
No, not
he was
at all.
trying to misguide the audience by telling that the RERA has been weakened. Of course, Mr. Pamar, of course. You do not have any moral, you do not have any
Of course not. I'll
ethical
explain,
right to
madam. I don't
misguide
think you have
people.
done your homework.
And number two, Bharti, no, please. I have done my homework very well, sir. I belong to the state
Then
where
let me explain it
most
to
of
you.
the
Once you
promoters,
complete, I'll
they had
explain
the
it to you.
parting time with the earlier governments. They were working hand in glove with the governments of Samajwadi Party and BSP. So I know very well that what is the psyche of the builders and the political parties like Samajwadi Party and the BSP, or I can say your co-partner or alliance partner.
You will do better if you
Since
could
Bharatiya
tell what
Janata
your
Party
government has done
come
after
in
coming
center
into
and
power.
in the state, the crackdown has been on these builders, and our government is assuring that they deliver the projects, or they have to face
Madam,
the
I
heat.
think it is a matter of
And
time
because
before
of
the
that,
builders
because of
join
that,
the list
one
of
second,
Lalit
one second,
Modi,
one second.
Nirav Modi
Working
and
day in
Vijay
and
Mallya,
day
Mehul
out, or the
Choksi.
government is
No,
there,
don't get
or who
derailed.
are close
It's
to
okay, okay, hang on. I'm going to stop both of you because we're running out of time and I would rather answer questions that our viewers are asking. Anila Singh and Aman Pawar, please stop. Abhay Mehta is on the phone line from
By the way,
Chandigarh.
RERA has a provision.
One second, gentlemen. I will come back to everybody. I want to hear the viewer on the phone line from Chandigarh. Please, Abhay Mehta, could you patch him in?
Hello, good evening, ma'am. Basically, I
Yes, yes.
have booked a plot with a studio apartment with the Sikka Kamna Green in sector 143 Noida
Yes.
in December 111. So, as per the agreement, the possession was to be given in December 2015. So I kept waiting for that. Then ultimately, in 2017, filed a case in the RERA, UP RERA. The UP RERA gave decision in my favor on 7th April.
Okay, and then what happened?
7th April 2018.
Yes.
Yeah, but the execution of the order is still pending. I am talking to the builders also. I am talking to the RERA authority also. They said there is a long queue of cases, so execution will take another 1 year. So I have another problem with the Mr. Advocate Kapil, who was saying that
Yes.
people that we are investors. Yes, I was an investor at that time, but I need a flat in that. So what I do, I have purchased a flat in the JP from my own resources, because so there are certain investors who want the flat also. They have made
Okay.
an alternate arrangement to buy the flats. So investors are also home buyers.
Investors are also home buyers. Mr. Tekchandani had a point
So
to make
therefore
about a
you're a home
provision
buyer.
in RERA, and then I'll go back to Kapil.
Yeah, what
1 second. Mr.
what I was
Tekchandani, go
telling,
ahead. Yes.
when we talk about RERA, RERA has a provision. It is mandatory for any sales which happens from the builder's end. Number one, it is mandatory to get the project registered. Number two, whatever sales proceed comes in, 70% of the fund has to be compulsory parked in a separate account or escrow account, whatever you call it,
No,
and
no.
that 70%
Yes.
is to be utilized for the land
Yes,
and
yes,
the
yes.
construction.
Mr. Tekchandani, I'm aware
So,
of that,
you know,
but
it
that
is
is
a
only
very valid
valid for
point.
buildings which are still making sales. Now, buildings which have come to a complete freeze halt, where there's litigation on it in various courts, where already, the buyers have made it public that this builder is not going to finish his project and is delayed by several years. There's not going to be any fresh sale, or is there going to be any fresh installment from these buyers coming in? So the escrow account now is irrelevant because there's no money there unless you retrospectively ask the developer to cough up the money that he has diverted. So technically the point right now is, for these buyers, what is the solution? There is no solution.
See, this verdict from Supreme Court is a very moral boosting for all the investors. Body like NBCC coming up and willing to develop on behalf of the builder and to bail out the builder. It is a sentiment driven market. So this has really given a boost to the sentiments of people who have already invested. See, the past has really been bad for real estate, for the buyers especially. The present is not good, but the future is going to be good with all the laws and such precedents coming into force, such bodies coming into action and delivering what was promised by someone but to someone. So these are the things. There are changes happening. RERA, the need of RERA was because of all this. All these things were happening. The funds was being mismanaged by the developers. And not only that, see, I'll tell you what. It's not only developers' fault. They were forced to mismanage the fund at times, not always, but at times. For example, the Noida land acquisition thing, which came up all of a sudden. Builder had already collected the fund for that project. Now the project was stalled. You couldn't have done anything. So he cannot keep the money with himself. He, invested in some other plot and then some other plot, and then things were, stalled. So everything crashed down.
Yes.
So these are things, the bird sanctuary issue which came up.
Okay.
The issue with the Supertech building, the building coming up to a certain level, and then the authority asking to demolish it because the distance is not much.
Yes.
So the first instance should be right. If the first move is right, things will be right.
All right, Aman Pawar had a point to make. Aman, go ahead, please.
Yes, Faye, you are absolutely right when you say that the escrow account point can only come to the rescue of new projects and not the old projects. And this is where I think that the order of the Supreme Court that has been passed today and yesterday will come as a huge relief, because now even the high courts around the country, they will get the courage to attach the personal assets of the builders wherever a project is delayed and a home buyer is made to suffer. Because it is not just that a home buyer is made to suffer in terms of waiting, but we need to realize that on one hand, the home buyer is paying the installments for the loan that he has availed to purchase the flat. On the other hand, many of the home buyers are living on rent in dream of the fact that probably in some time they will get their own house from the builder, which is indefinitely delayed. So I think to that extent, the order of the Supreme Court will come as a huge relief to a lot of home buyers around the country. Secondly, I would like to make the point regarding the escrow account and the separate account. There is a huge difference between the two. The 2013 bill, as it was passed by the Congress government in the Rajya Sabha, had a clause that there will be an escrow account wherein the builder for a new project will have to deposit 70% of the amount which he has collected from the home buyers in that escrow account, and he can only withdraw the money from the escrow account after taking permission from the RERA.
Yes.
Whereas the separate account clause which has been introduced by the BJP says that only 50% of the amount of the money will have to be put in that separate account, and there will be no permission required for the builder to be taken from the RERA. So the builder can withdraw the amount without taking any permission from RERA and again divert funds wherever they want.
So this is where the BJP
has
little knowledge is dangerous
under
thing.
the
Go and do your homework.
I'm sorry, that's
Read about separate account.
That why have they
All right, 1 second. I want to remind Aman Pawar one more time that every state government had the elbow room to draft their own laws based on how things work within their state, because land is a state subject.
Not in contrary to the Parent Act. Not in contrary to the Parent Act.
So which are the states that went contrary to
the Parent Act? Provides that they will have to, the only requirement for them is to have a separate account and not an escrow account. There is a huge difference. In an escrow account, the money could have only been invested for that particular project.
I don't believe that's true at all. In fact, 1 second, Aman Pawar, I'm going to stop you now. Aman Pawar, I'm going to stop you now and ask you to reread that one more time. Kapilji, you've looked at RERA. Is there specifics that have been diluted by escrow accounts have been turned into regular accounts? Because I know developers have been complaining about escrow accounts.
Well, you're absolutely you're right in a sense, but let me just explain what's the difference between an escrow account and a separate account and how the government has actually safeguarded a separate account. You see, a separate account is just like any other account. What the government has said is, to withdraw money, you need to have a certificate from a chartered accountant or from some other professional as regards to the number of construction that has happened, etc., etc. An escrow account, on the other hand, would have been a tripartite account. There is one person who deposits money, the other person who withdraws money, and someone in the middle who's a trustee. So therefore, an escrow account, a person looks at whether the amount has been deposited and whether that contingency for which it has been deposited has been withdrawn. Please, let me just finish. However, such a contingency is also seen in this account, in a separate account. Here, without a certificate of a chartered accountant, the builder cannot withdraw money. So therefore, as far as those checks and balances are concerned,
How
that has been
difficult is it
taken
to
care of
procure a
in
certificate
this
from a chartered
act
accountant?
also
Please tell
by
me,
this
sir.
government. Now, sir, let me just finish. Let me just finish. Let me just finish, sir. Let me just finish. Now, coming back to the other aspect that I was saying, there was a gentleman who said, I was an investor, now I'm a home buyer, and I'm in complete agreement with him. See, my only grouse is this, that at one time the Honorable Supreme Court had said that 138 Negotiable Instrument Act has choked the system. Now, I'm actually thinking that there are thousands and millions of cases against home buyers which are choking down the system, which are slowing down the system. Let us talk about speeding it up. Let us talk about making not only the builders accountable, but also ensuring that the properties are developed, the projects are developed, and those projects are handed over to the home buyers. So what I'm saying is, let us look at the judgment, the order of the Honorable Supreme Court in the perspective that the Honorable Supreme Court wanted to find a solution for the home buyers, putting the home buyers first. Let us look at it into the perspective that it doesn't really help the home buyer. If you file hundreds and thousands and millions of cases and CBI inquiries, the idea is to make a home buyer accountable, and how do you do that? Either you get in touch with the home buyer, you enter into a contract, and you get either an escrow account or some kind of understanding with the builder, or secondly, you make them accountable by getting in a third party builder. It could be under the aegis of the courts, it could be under some understanding, but the idea is to create avenues so that those projects can be delivered and be given to the home buyers, and it just doesn't become an excuse of billions of cases choking down our judicial system, which it already has.
Right, we have a couple of people still on the phone line with us. Vijaya on the phone line from Delhi. Vijaya, go ahead.
Yeah, say this is not just about people who have gone to the court. I'm one of those who have not who has not taken the trouble to go to court, but I'm also a home buyer and I'm also an investor. It's my hard-earned money which is stuck in this project.
Okay.
And mine is a reputed builder who promised to deliver within 4 years. And in last year, I was told to give the, not even last year, Jan 2017, I was told to give the registration amount. And recently in July 18, there is no difference in the stage of construction or progress in completion of the flat, and absolutely no scope for registration. This is a very reputed builder in Delhi that I'm talking about, and I can imagine how many such builders are playing with our lives. So I think it is not just about NBCC taking up projects and completing projects. It is also about some audit required for these builders before we allow them to take up new projects. I think we have to choke them so that they realize that they're playing with our lives.
Absolutely. Pradeep on the phone line from Chennai. Pradeep, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a well-known modus operandi that builders operate in. Sorry to say, in our country, India. That is, they take money from for a particular project from the buyers. They pump that money into their next project. And that's a chain which goes on. When the next project there is bookings, they take little bit of money and try completing this project. Now, what happens if the next project, there are no buyers? When the market is down, that is exactly what has happened here. And if people say that they don't know about this or they are coming to know about this only now, I'm sorry, everybody knows about this. And this is a nexus between the builders and political establishment. And everybody knows about that also. Yes. That is why builders are scot-free. They have been doing this
well, it's interesting that Aman Pawar is agreeing so wholeheartedly. A lot of these scams happened in the previous regime, Aman Pawar.
So if that is my point, that the RERA law was brought in by the Congress government, that the bill was brought in by the Congress government to curb it. And I concede to this fact that across whatever the regime might have been, there were these kind of nexuses, and that's why our intention was to bring in the clause for the escrow account. Now my question today is, why has the bill been diluted?
Well, we also have Shriram
No,
Khanna.
again, he
Yes.
is singing the same tune.
No, 1 second. Let me bring in Shriram Khanna, please. Shriram Khanna is a consumer expert who represents the consumer voice. Mr. Khanna, do you believe that all of that fuss that was made about a real estate regulator has actually amounted to nothing because it's a completely toothless tiger?
I think the central government and the state governments have completely compromised the spirit of the law under RERA. The builders are working hand in glove with officials of state governments, and the state government leadership is turning a blind eye, and the result is that the RERA authority has not been able to crack down on the builders. Actually, they are in many states like UP and Haryana, they are complicit with the builders. While thousands of people have not got their flats, the RERA authority has not passed orders against the builders to refund the money. And I believe that the officers who are dealing with these complaints under RERA are hand in glove with the builders. And I think until you appoint only judicial officers who are answerable to the high courts, these adjudications between builders and home buyers, problems in RERA authority, they cannot be justly adjudicated. So I am charging the Union Urban Ministry and the ministries of works and developments of the states like Haryana and Uttar Pradesh are being complicit with the builders and not implementing even the diluted versions of the RERA Act, which has now become a law. And it's a shame to see that until the Supreme Court, until the Supreme Court reacts and passes orders, these state governments do nothing. Tell me which state government has got any money back for any of the people who are affected. It's only by Supreme Court order that something is happening. These state government officials are hand in glove with the builders. This is my charge to the ministers of UP and Haryana of the NDA governments. They are complicit with the builders, and thousands of homeowners have been cheated, and these builders have not been brought to the book. Not one has been sent to jail.
Answer that question then.
Have you sent anybody to jail?
Anila Singh, you said you are from UP, but how many times have you recovered the money of the customers? Go ahead.
Yes. No, let me say what I want to say for right now. I totally object what Mr. Khanna is saying right now, because he doesn't have any knowledge what is happening in Uttar Pradesh at least. I come from Uttar Pradesh, as I told you. I know very well. Let me give you an example, Mr. Khanna, right now. That no, you keep quiet and listen to me. 11,000 crore.
No, how many orders
he's an aggrieved buyer. 11,000 crore rupees is due on these builders.
The ruling party, you should say that
from 94.
Madam, you are
Let me complete, sir. If
you have no facts. You are just
you should rather say that we will take the responsibility of this.
94 builders,
Don't
they
try
have
to
to
cover
pay
up what the state
11,000
government has not
crore
done.
of rupees to
State government is guilty of
And in the
negligence
first
and complicity.
phase, almost 40 builders are being audited. And many of them are behind the bars. And they have been given time to complete the project and give the money to the authority and the flats to the buyers. This is what the BJP government is doing in Uttar Pradesh. High-level committee has been formed.
Not
They are
one
looking
flat
into
has
the
been
matter.
given.
They are
Not one money has been
ensuring
given.
that the buyers will get the flats.
Not one
No,
flat
you are
given.
accusing the union government, you
No
are
flat
accusing
given,
the
no
state
money
government.
refunded.
You know,
No
this is
interest, no
absolutely
compensation.
Union
incorrect.
government
All right.
You are simply...
Well, the truth is, one second. It's very easy. One second. Anila Singh, the truth is that while there were those many buyers in the beginning of last year who had not got their home, that number has not changed. There are still thousands and thousands of people across the country who've paid upwards of 1 crore rupees for an apartment, and that apartment was never delivered. And now you have builders who are not finishing these homes, and while it comes up for auction, there are other lenders, there are investors, there are banks who stand in line to recover their money before the home buyer. The home buyer comes last, the home buyer is last priority, and RERA has not been able to change that. And we've seen from the central government to various state governments, all state governments, Shriram Khanna was right, have in fact diluted RERA. They've diluted the rules, and the RERA in place is slow and unable to change anything on the ground. The customers are still going to consumer court, still going to high court and still going to Supreme Court. And Shriram Khanna is also right about the fact that the big orders of recovering money or completing projects have only come from the courts, and the real estate regulator has been able to do precious little in most of these states other than to just further slow things down. Has RERA in fact become a toothless tiger, or will it be able to improve over the next few years unless the rules are improved? And the rules right now are in the favor of developers and not in the favor of customers. Until those who write our rules fight for the citizen, we're not going to have too much justice. In the meantime, thank God for our courts. I want to remind our viewers that the Supreme Court has decided no more dirty games from builders like Amrapali. It's attached all of the 40 bank accounts of the various businesses of this company, including some of the personal assets of the people who run these businesses. It has been very stern about the behavior of the brazen attitude of this developer, and it has now asked for a government organization in BCC to step in and complete the homes for these customers. This might be the solution we've all been waiting for. One hopes that NBCC, who's been given 30 days to come up with a plan and a deadline, is able to finally give these customers homes, and that will then become a blueprint for other customers across the country. Thanks for watching.